We have something special here, AKAPADers. 2015. James Vanderbilt. This is our writer-director. This is a Cate Blanchett movie. Little bit surprised she didn't go through the nomination rounds. Cate Blanchett and her hair in this movie deserved an Oscar nomination. Phenomenal hair. But no, this movie absolutely surprising. I was digging around looking for something to bring to you guys, something to talk to you guys about for President's Day. Every single year, I seem to go to the movie Nixon, say, you know what, this is going to be the year I bring you Oliver Stone's Nixon. And every single year, it's $20 on Amazon Prime, Amazon In Demand. So we don't do that. This movie's available on Hulu right now, and it's also of a time within the press. And Robert Redford's in this movie, and it has one amazing cast. And this is one great procedural experience where, like, again, like we have this investigation, and then things happen, and everything starts to unravel. And we're just waiting to see what happens next, and that's like the secret trigger for these movies like this. It's a procedure. We're moving through the chains. It's okay, but make it. If you do that, make it this good, and that's where we are. So let's go.
Camera speed, sound production, take one.
Action!
So here we go. 2004 presidential election. Mary Mapes. This is who Cate Blanchett and her amazing hair play. Robert Redford plays Dane Rather, and we have Topher Grace in this movie. We have Elizabeth Moss, we have Bruce Greenwood, we have Dennis Quaid, who is one of the, I guess, like associate producers, or he's a supervising producer. There's this current lawsuit, right? Like the Trump administration is suing 60 Minutes for deceptively editing interviews. And at one time, I think you would watch this movie in the context of, and this is very similar to our Silver Linings Playbook discussion, where the Eagles winning a second Super Bowl changes the context of Silver Linings Playbook, where you would watch this and the movie ends, and it's like, hey, we don't think it was political bias, but clearly some of the decision makings along the way, it still could have leaned politically. We can't say for certain, but it's kind of there, and it's sometimes like these ideas and these truths are just hard to escape. Now, with that being said, this is 60 Minutes. This is the story we're telling. They put out this George Bush military story with these dossiers and these memos. And basically, within a couple hours of them airing this episode that they think is going to swing the election, or be like a little dagger in the election, the internet just basically just dissects it. Just says, hey, like this is fake. Like this is just not true. And we kind of do see a lot of this weirdness that happens around Trump with this, things like the Steele dossier, things with 60 Minutes editing that Kamala Harris interview. And you want to say, like, this is politics. This is how tricky and deep politics can get. Where is it possible? And Cate Blanchett's character, Mary Mapes, in a wonderful monologue at the end of this movie, she addresses the reality of faking essentially like hundreds of memos, military documents. With that said, we know what both political parties can do just when it comes to opposition research and designed opposition, meaning we can manufacture something. This was the whole position against Hunter Biden's laptop, where you could easily believe it was fake as much as it was real. Robert Redford, his Dane Rather is absolutely phenomenal. He's Robert Redford playing Robert Redford. James Vanderbilt just lets him do what he wants, and we're okay with it, because what the lines that Redford has to deliver, the way he delivers them, it gets you through the scene, and it comes through like a level of authority. But this movie also depicts what happens when you become a public martyr. Like, what it's a little bit scary. There's a couple movies that go down this route, and you just feel for the people who essentially, even if it is biased, even if it's not. Now the movie dictates it's not biased at all. There's no there's no political positioning with this reporting. It's hard to believe. I think, and Vanderbilt understands how this needs to get delivered to the audience, because a lot of times with these types of movies, and HBO did it with the election one, with the Bush Gore election, where they kind of run the movie a certain way where things have to get recounted, things are up for grabs, but then Bush never did lose any of the recounts. And we get that with the final title card. We do something similar with truth, and I do feel it's responsible. We are led to believe that the inner gears of this investigation that got unleashed onto 60 Minutes and on Mary Mapes, Cate Blanchett, this investigation, even though it's not explicit, they didn't write it, but they believe it was politically motivated. There was a political bias with accepting this information, and how quickly these documents just got dissected on the internet, torn apart, and with real ideas around how it was done. This movie blew me away. It really did. I selected it because I was just curious. I saw Vanderbilt's name. I quickly looked him up. As soon as I started going into his filmography, I just said, wow, I'm like, this guy. And to me, it's a little bit wild. We didn't go through his filmography like we did previously. Speaking of filmographies, let's just get into it. I was thinking about making this a different episode. In 2003, how many times can you recall this? He writes 3 movies directed by 3 top tier people in one calendar year. He launches The Rock's career with Peter Berg, the movies The Rundown. We were just talking about that because we did Friday Night Lights not long ago. John McTiernan, Mr. Die Hard, Mr. Lace Action Hero. He's fighting for relevance. He might be ill around this time. Basic with John Travolta, Samuel Jackson. And then we get this one. My former brother-in-law, we'll just say. I reckon, when he was, I think dating my sister. And he would bring this up. He never let this go. So in 2003, we get this movie called Darkness Falls. It's a grungy, horrific retelling of The Tooth Fairy. And it's, we get some adulation. We get some, knob rolling on AintItCoolNews.com. And McFarlane, Movie Maniacs is the toy line. They do a Darkness Falls figure. And this is substantial because to get an action figure around a release of a movie it's like a lot of times, like horror action figures, they would just take forever to get some type of like interpretation. But Darkness Falls was like kind of like just like pushing this rollout. So to me, it was magnified. You had to pay attention to it. Harry Knowles was singing his praises on Any Cool News. McFarlane Toys, Movie Maniacs, action figure. I see the movie. I recommend it. I thought it was great. I haven't explored Darkness Falls in quite some time. Caveat. But anyway, the feedback comes back, and my brother-in-law completely hates the movie. He almost never let me live that down. I guess that's the one benefit. If they did get divorced, that I can just stop hearing about how someone didn't like Darkness Falls in 2003. Kill me now. So 4 years later, David Fincher, Zodiac, he writes that. 3 years after that, The Losers, one of the most underrated comic book movies we have. And here we go. The Amazing Spider-Man with Mark Webb, 2012. I love the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man movies. He's involved with the story, produces the follow-up in 2014. Between the two, he writes White House Down, Roland Emmerich. So far on this podcast, we have discussed Zodiac, we've discussed Spider-Man, we've discussed White House Down, we discussed Amazing Spider-Man 2, 2015, he writes and directs Truth, discussing that now. And look, the next year, right after this, Writer, and this might be the one movie I would sit down with him on, Independence Day Resurgence. We did that here. Slender Man. I'm pretty sure we did Slender Man. He's a producer for that. We did that for the 31 Days of Dread. The House with Clocks, with a Clock in Its Walls. Jack Black. That's been on my loose list. I forget that Eli Roth directed that. I think I had that for the 31 Days of Dread at one time as like a children's horror movie. Murder Mystery. Writer-producer. Murder Mystery with Adam Sandler, Jennifer Aniston, at one time was like the most Netflixed movie in history. I think that was their top streamed or watched item at one time. Ready or Not, of the trapped in the house current horror movie trope that we just get with, recently this year we had Heretic. Everyone's trapped in the house in Heretic. We just had Barbarian last year, where everyone's trapped in the house. Maybe that's 2 years ago. And also this year we had the Inheritance, where everyone's trapped in the house. Ready or Not could potentially have started a little bit of this horror trend. Ready or Not 2 is also one of the most original concepts. Now later, and also for the 31 Days of Dread 2024, he uses that same trope, that same device, I'll say, for like set piece for horror or gimmick for horror. Abigail, the vampire ballerina girl that just slays and takes out a bunch of criminals that you're happy to see get their just desserts. We've done that on this podcast. 2022-2023, Scream and Scream 6. We've done those on this podcast. Murder Mystery 2. So I kind of want to get in. He's writer producer for Murder Mystery 2. He is the producer for some of these movies. He is producer only for Abigail. Producer only. Ambulance. Michael Bay, producer only. We've done that on this podcast. But this guy has touched a lot. I mean, in this year, he has Fountain of Youth with Guy Ritchie. He's got Scream 7 coming with Kevin Williamson directing. Mark Webb, Roland Emmerich, Sylvia White, Michael Bay, Guy Ritchie. His directors. It's insane, the people that that used his words to create something. He is one of the preeminent writers we have today. I get that, it's hard for people to extrapolate and imagine what happens with the producer credit, but when you have a run of writing this many scripts with top tier talent, when you get into the producer zone, sometimes the writing, and because of the union, a lot of credit can just kind of be stripped, or it bleeds away from you, and you kind of have to abide by union guidelines. So you will become a producer of a movie, and even, like, let's just say within like a 10, 15 year, 20 year career, if you spend all this time writing top tier, even as a producer, you could be a very effective producer just based on the names you have and the relationships you have in your phone. That, and I know some of that goes without saying, but let's be clear sometimes with what we think producers do, because you have guys that are producers who only ever are producers, and in cases like this where someone has somewhat of a filmography as writer and then as writer producer, we kind of would assume that a lot of these producer credits are stemming out of doing story work for these movies. We have to say this guy Vanderbilt here has story. Like, he has figured something out to he just knows what makes a good story. And it's just looking at his filmography, I would say it just seems mystical. I'll watch anything that this guy does. The Abigail, you go back and listen to that podcast. I was so surprised and impressed by that movie. That movie really blew me away. the way Scream, pun intended, screamed back into the consciousness, insanely impressive. The melodrama of the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man, fantastic. This movie, procedural, like masterpiece. There, like you want to see what happens every single scene in this movie. Every single scene, in truth, you want to see what happens in the next scene. That's exactly what you want. Also, truth, like great. It looks great. The music, Brian Tyler, who is of the school of Michael Bay and some of the Transformer movies. I think he's got all the really good Transformer themes like under his belt. He's a virtuoso. Great music. And then we question that this is a lower budget procedural movie, just like The Post, for example. Could this have been Oscar bait? It didn't hit the rounds, but it did get adulation from the people around this story. And I think this is a fair take. So check this movie out. It's available on Hulu. And happy President's Day, everyone.
Okay, that's a wrap.